Welcome to this channel, and here we teach different topics in basic technology for junior secondary school 1 to junior secondary school 3. And as the schools have resumed, this is the 4th week. We are trying to make our students to understand the topics that they have been taught in junior secondary school 1 to junior secondary school 3. And here we'll be focusing on a topic. The first topic for junior secondary school 3, I will still work on that of junior secondary school 1 and that of the junior secondary school 2. Okay, so let's go and see the topic that we have today for junior secondary school 3, which is their first topic for the term. Okay. Week 1, and then we have the topic to be processing of materials, and we are focusing on timber in this topic. Okay, as you were taught properties of materials in junior secondary school 1, and here we are looking at the processing of materials, how we can get the materials to use to make any project that we have in basic technology. The objectives of this topic is that at the end of this lesson, you should be able to describe a timber, state and explain the stages involved in the processing of timber, state and explain common timber defects, and also state and explain the forms of wood. Those are the objectives of this topic, and I would like you to follow me as I explain each of what we have in this topic one by one. Let's go. Okay, we are looking at lesson 1, and in lesson 1, we are starting with production of timber. And timber, or a timber, is wood that is used for building houses and for making furniture such as tables, chair, cabinet, and so on. And as you can see here in the diagram that we have here, these are logs of wood or timber, and then we have processed timber to make this chair and to make this table. Then in the next slide, we have stages involved in timber production. Stages involved in timber production. So we have 5 stages that a timber has to undergo before we can make use of it to make chairs, to make tables, to make cabinets, and also to make shelves and some other things that we can use it for. So as I said, a timber has to undergo these 5 stages before it can be used to make one thing or the other that we can form with wood. And 5 stages are: number 1, we have timber growth, and number 2, we have felling of timber, number 3, we have conversion of timber, and 4, we have seasoning of timber, 5, we have preservation of timber. Let me say it again. The 5 stages that a timber has to undergo before it can be used to make any wooden object: we have timber growth, we have felling of timber, we have conversion of timber, we have seasoning of timber, then we have preservation of timber. These are the 5 stages that a timber has to undergo before it can be used to make one wooden project or the other. Then let's look at the next slide and see what we have in the next slide. Okay, then in this slide, the first that we are looking at is the stage 1 that has to do with the growth of timber. And that is why we can see here on the screen, stage 1, growth of timber. Now, for a tree to grow, it has to obtain its food, food in form of sap from the soil. It obtains sap, which is a mixture of water, phosphate, and nitrate from the soil. Then the sap passes through the root to the stem and also to the leaves. And the leaves manufacture the food for the plant through a process known as photosynthesis, which you've been taught in basic science. Then the food is now taken to all part of the tree. The food is now taken to all part of the tree, and the sap stores food and later develops to form cambium layer, which is the living part of the tree. This diagram that we have here is showing us how the sap enters into the body of the tree. As you can see here, sap absorption. So the sap enters into the body of the tree, and the food is manufactured in the through the process known as photosynthesis. Then the sap travels back into the body of the tree and circulates around and later form what we call cambium layer. So the cambium layer is the living part of the tree. Now, this diagram that we have here is showing us the structure of wood stem, the structure of wood stem. And if you look at this structure very well, so the part of the structure of wood stem is what we see here. We have the one that we call heartwood, we have sapwood, we have cambium layer, we have phloem, we have bark, and we have annual rings. Okay, so it's very, very important that you may pause this video and look at this structure of the wooden stem. Then that is how a tree grows, by obtaining a sap from the soil, and that sap is the mixture of water, phosphate, and nitrate. And then the sap travels to the leaves, and the leaves manufacture the food of the tree, then returns back into the body of the tree, circulates around, and form what we call cambium layer, which is the living part of the tree. Now, let's see the next slide. Now, in the next slide, we have types of tree growth, or types of growth that happens in the tree. As I have told my students, as a tree undergoes this kind of growth that we have, human beings also undergo this kind of growth. The two types of growth that a tree undergo, we have vertical or primary growth, so which takes place in the tip of the shoot and root of the tree, and it occurs throughout the lifespan of the tree. The vertical growth or primary growth, it takes place in the tip of the shoot and root of a tree, and it occurs throughout the lifespan of the tree. Then we also have the second type of growth that a tree undergoes, known as horizontal or secondary growth. So this type of growth, it takes place in the cambium layer, and as the growth continues in the plant, annual rings are formed. Okay, so if you look at the diagram that we have here, this diagram is showing us the growth of a tree. So here we have it here. This is the first growth. So this is the first growth. Then it grows, and then it formed this, and then it formed this, and formed this, and then finally to this matured one. And if you look at the tree, as it's growing vertically, it's also growing horizontally. If you look at its body here, you see that the body that we have here is different from this one. This one is different from this. This one is different from this, and also this one, which is the matured one, also look fatter than this one. Okay, so those are the two types of growth that a tree undergoes. It undergoes a vertical growth and also undergoes horizontal growth. Let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so the next slide is for us to examine ourselves based on what we have studied in this lesson 1. And it says that question 1 says that mention the stages involved in timber processing. Mention the stages involved in timber processing. As I've said, we have 5 stages. The first stage is that we have that to be timber growth or growth of timber. Then the second stage is felling of timber. The third stage is conversion of timber. The fourth stage is seasoning of timber. And the fifth stage is preservation of timber. Those are the 5 stages in which a timber has to undergo before we can use it to make one wooden project or the other. Then question 2 says that we should state the types of growth in timber. So we just discussed that a timber undergo 2 types of growth, or a tree undergoes 2 types of growth. We have the vertical or primary growth. Then we have horizontal or secondary growth. Let's move on to the next slide. So the next slide talks about felling of timber. And the felling of timber is the process of cutting down matured trees for timber production. The felling of timber is the process of cutting down mature trees for timber production. That is the meaning of felling of timber. After the tree has grown and has gotten to its age of maturity and we need it to make something, we have to cut it down. So the process of cutting down mature tree for timber production is known as felling of timber. So the cutting of timber can be done in two places. The felling of timber can be done in two places. The first one is known as forest reserved area. Forest reserved area. So forest reserved area belongs to the government, or it is owned by the government and also maintained by the government. But whenever you are to cut down a tree in that forest reserve area, you have to pay to the government based on the number of trees that you want to cut down or that you want to fell. So that is all that we have here under the forest reserved area. Then we also have free areas. The free areas, it belongs to individuals, and then you have to pay. You have to cut down that tree. You have to pay to the person that is maintaining that environment where that tree is planted. Then after you have processed it, so you pay a tax or tariff to the government for the timber that you are to sell. Then the next slide that we have here, so we have next slide. It talks about conversion of timber. Conversion of timber. So after we have cut down the timber for timber production, or the tree for timber production, then we need to cut it into sizes that can be used by a carpenter to make one thing or the other, to make one wooden project or the other. And the process of cutting the timber into marketable or commercial sizes is what we call conversion of timber. As we have here, that conversion of timber is the process of cutting timber into commercial or marketable sizes. Then methods of conversion, as we have here, methods of converting timber into marketable sizes. We have plain sawn method and we have quarter sawn method. These are the main two methods that are used for converting timber into marketable or commercial sizes. So the diagram needs to be studied, and this diagram also needs to be studied. All right, so let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so the next slide is just for us to evaluate ourselves on what we have done in this lesson 1. So this is the second evaluation in which we are going to ask ourselves questions. And the question 1 says that briefly explain felling of timber and state 2 areas where timber can be felled. So as I said, that the felling of timber is the process of cutting down mature trees for timber production. Felling of timber is the process of cutting down mature trees for timber production. And I said that for us there are 2 places where the cutting of timber can be done. We have the first one that we call forest reserve area, and the second one is free area. Then question 2 says that briefly explain conversion of timber and state the methods of timber conversion. So conversion of timber is the process of cutting timber into marketable or commercial sizes. The process of cutting timber into marketable or commercial sizes is what we call conversion of timber. And the 2 methods that can be used to cut timber into marketable sizes are known as, the first one is plain sawn method, and the second is quarter sawn method. So we come to the end of this lesson. So listen to this video. We'll look at diagrams very well, very, very important. And then I pray that God will give you understanding in Jesus' name. Thank you. Keep on studying, and God bless you.